You know these stories. You've heard them since childhood. Noah's Ark, David and Goliath, the prodigal son. But here's the problem. You've been told sanitized versions, children's versions, versions that miss the point entirely. Today, we're going back to 10 essential Bible stories, not to retell them, but to understand them. Because these aren't just nice tales with moral lessons. These are God-breathed accounts that reveal his character, his plan, and his demand on your life. By the end of this video, you'll never read these stories the same way again. Let's go. Story number 1, Creation and the Fall. Genesis chapters 1 through 3. This isn't a debate about how old the earth is. It's about why the world is broken. God creates a perfect world. He creates humanity in his image. He gives one command: don't eat from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. And what do Adam and Eve do? They eat. Why does this matter? Because this is where sin enters. This is where death enters. This is where separation from God begins. Every problem you face, pain, suffering, death, injustice, traces back to this moment. But here's what most people miss. God doesn't abandon them. He covers their shame. He promises a redeemer. Genesis 3:15 is the first gospel promise. The seed of the woman will crush the serpent's head. This story isn't just about what went wrong. It's about God's plan to make it right. Story number 2, Noah's Ark, Genesis 6 through 9. Stop thinking about cute animals on a boat. This is a story about judgment. The world is so wicked that God regrets creating humanity. But Noah finds favor. God commands him to build an ark. For 120 years, Noah preaches and builds. The people mock him. Then the flood comes, and everyone outside the ark dies. This is terrifying, but it's also grace. God could have wiped out humanity entirely. Instead, he saves 8 people and gives the world a second chance. And here's the Jesus connection. 1 Peter 3:20 compares the flood to baptism. Just as Noah and his family were saved through water, we are saved through Christ. The ark is a picture of salvation. There's only one door, and if you're not in, you perish. Story number 3, Abraham's test. Genesis 22. God tells Abraham to sacrifice his son Isaac, the son of promise. The son Abraham waited 25 years for, and Abraham obeys. He takes Isaac up the mountain. He binds him. He raises the knife. And at the last second, God stops him. A ram is provided. Why does God do this? To test Abraham's faith? Yes. But more than that, this is a preview of the gospel. God asks Abraham to do what he himself will do, sacrifice his only son. Except when God sacrifices Jesus, there's no last-second rescue. The knife falls. The son dies. Abraham's test teaches us that God doesn't ask anything of us that he hasn't already done himself. Story number 4, Moses and the Exodus. Exodus 12 through 14. Israel is enslaved in Egypt. God raises up Moses. 10 plagues fall. Pharaoh refuses to let the people go. Then comes the final plague, the death of the firstborn. But God provides a way of escape. Every household that spreads the blood of a lamb on their doorposts will be passed over. That night, Israel is freed. Pharaoh chases them to the Red Sea. They're trapped, and God parts the water. They walk through on dry ground. Egypt's army follows and drowns. This isn't just a cool miracle. This is the story of redemption. You were enslaved to sin. God provided a lamb, Jesus. His blood covers you, and he leads you through death into new life. Paul says it plainly in 1 Corinthians 5:7. Christ, our Passover lamb, has been sacrificed. Story number 5. David and Goliath. 1 Samuel 17. This is not a story about overcoming your giants. Stop saying that. This is a story about God's power working through the weak. Israel faces the Philistines. Goliath, a 9-foot giant, taunts them. Saul and the army are terrified. But David, a shepherd boy, steps up. Not because he's brave, not because he believes in himself. He steps up because he trusts God. The battle is the Lord's, he says. 1 stone, 1 shot. Goliath falls. Here's the real point. You are not David. Jesus is David. You're the cowering Israelite army. And Jesus fights the giant, sin, death, Satan, that you could never defeat. This story humbles you. It's not about your strength. It's about his. Story number 6, the prodigal son. Luke 15. A son demands his inheritance early, basically wishing his father dead. He wastes it all on reckless living. He ends up feeding pigs, starving. He decides to return home and beg to be a servant. But when the father sees him, he runs. In first-century Jewish culture, fathers didn't run. It was undignified. But this father doesn't care. He embraces his son. He throws a feast. He restores him fully. This is scandalous grace. The son doesn't even get to finish his apology. The father doesn't wait for him to clean up. He runs while the son is still far off. That's the gospel. You don't fix yourself and then come to God. You come broken, and he runs to you. But there's a second son, the older brother. Outwardly obedient, but inwardly resentful. He's angry that grace is shown to the younger son. He's the Pharisee. And Jesus is warning. You can obey all the rules and still be lost. Story number 7, the Good Samaritan. Luke 10. A man is robbed, beaten, and left for dead. A priest passes by. A Levite passes by. Both religious leaders. Both ignore him. Then a Samaritan stops. Jews hated Samaritans. They were considered half-breeds and heretics. But this Samaritan bandages the man's wounds, takes him to an inn, and pays for his care. Jesus asks, who was the neighbor? The answer, the one who showed mercy. This story destroys our excuses. Your neighbor isn't just the person who looks like you, talks like you, or believes like you. Your neighbor is anyone in need. And you're called to show radical, inconvenient, costly love. Story number 8. Jesus calms the storm. Mark 4. Jesus and the disciples are in a boat. A storm rises. Waves crash. The boat fills with water. The disciples panic. And Jesus? He's asleep. They wake him. Teacher, don't you care if we drown? Jesus stands. He speaks to the wind and waves. Peace, be still. Immediately the storm stops. Then he asks, why are you afraid? Do you still have no faith? Here's the lesson. Jesus has authority over chaos, over nature, over the storms in your life. But more than that, if Jesus is in the boat, you're not going to drown. The question isn't whether he can calm the storm. The question is, Do you trust him even when he seems asleep? Story number 9, the crucifixion. Matthew 27. Jesus is arrested, beaten, mocked, a crown of thorns pressed into his skull. He's whipped until his back is shredded. He carries a cross through the streets of Jerusalem. Nails are driven through his hands and feet. He's lifted up between two criminals, and for 6 hours he hangs there. But this isn't just suffering. This is substitution. Isaiah 53. He was pierced for our transgressions, crushed for our iniquities. The punishment that brought us peace was on him. Every sin you've ever committed, past, present, future, was placed on Jesus. And he bore the wrath of God so you wouldn't have to. The cross isn't a tragedy. It's a triumph. It's the moment sin was defeated and the way to God was opened. Story number 10, the resurrection. John 20. 3 days after Jesus died, Mary Magdalene goes to the tomb. The stone is rolled away. The tomb is empty. She sees angels. Then she sees Jesus. He's alive. Later, he appears to the disciples. Thomas doubts until Jesus shows him the scars. Why does this matter? Because if Jesus didn't rise, Christianity is worthless. Paul says it in 1 Corinthians 15. If Christ has not been raised, your faith is futile. You are still in your sins. But Christ has been raised. Death couldn't hold him. And because he lives, you will live. The resurrection is the guarantee that everything Jesus said is true. It's the foundation of your hope. It's the proof that God keeps his promises. So here's the truth. These 10 stories aren't isolated. They're connected. They all point to Jesus. The promise in Genesis 3:15, fulfilled in Jesus. The ark that saved Noah, a picture of Jesus. Abraham's ram, a foreshadow of Jesus. The Passover lamb, Jesus. David defeating Goliath, Jesus defeating sin and death. The prodigal son's father, Jesus running to you. The Good Samaritan, Jesus binding your wounds. Jesus calming the storm, dying on the cross, rising from the dead. It's all one story. The story of redemption. The story of a God who pursues, rescues, and restores. So don't just know these stories. Let them change you. If this video gave you a new perspective, hit the like button. Subscribe for more Bible teaching that goes deeper. And comment, which story hit you hardest today? Let's keep learning together.